Hey, Redcasters, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Go Big Red. Welcome to the Forum, the show where we learn more about Husker Nation one fan at a time by asking the same four questions. I'm your host, Honky, and tonight we're joined by a standout Husker offensive tackle from the mid-1980s. During his senior year, he earned first-team academic All-America and third-team All-America honors, which helped launch an NFL career with the St. Louis and Phoenix Cardinals. And after football, he built a successful career in business, has continued giving back to Nebraska as an entrepreneurship community fellow and a member of the UNL Center for Entrepreneurship Advisory Board. Welcome to the Forum, Tom Welter.
Well, thank you, Honky. That was a mouthful.
Yeah, hey, well, you've given me a mouthful to talk about. That's a heck of a career on and off the field. I didn't even mention the fact that in a couple of weeks here, you're going to be getting inducted into the 2025 class of the Nebraska Football Hall of Fame. And what does that mean to you?
Yeah, that's really kind of surreal. I mean, thinking about that and thinking about that journey for 40 years and coming to Nebraska, I don't think I could ever have anticipated that. And my goal was always to get on the field and contribute, and to have this happen, just been exciting and outstanding.
Yeah, well, and what an amazing class to be going in with as well. So joining you will be I-back Derek Brown from the 1990s era. The late I-back Darren Diedrich, he's from the 2000s. Place kicker punter Brent Maher from 2008 to 2015 era there. Wide receiver Kenny Bell, we all remember him from the Pliny era there. Linebacker Bob Nelson as well. He was selected as the veteran inductee. And then UNO linebacker Tom Sutko as well as this year's state college representative. So this is more than just Huskers going into it. But I mean, that's a heck of a class of people to be going in with. It's got to be real exciting for you.
Well, it's unbelievable. I mean, you've got a Raider that played for over a decade, Super Bowl champion, and I thought I was going to go in with the best hair, and then Kenny Bell jumps in and he just tops me just right there from the get. So, but it's exciting because Kenny had over 2,700 yards as a receiver. Both running backs, is funny, they both were right at that mark also, 2,700 yards. So having guys that knew how to run the rock, knew what Nebraska football was all about. We got a kicker in this one, which is so exciting, and he's still part of the programs. I mean, I read a couple stats about him. I think he kicked, the number is crazy, how many he kicked over 50 yards and slipped over 60 yards, field goals. I mean, he's real deal. So we love that.
Yeah. Well, and I love it when former players, they give back like this. They come back and do things with the program. Before we get into our questions, I want to give you some credit for this too. You've given back. And one of the ways I met you through the Center for Entrepreneurship. And this year, you're being awarded with more than just the Hall of Fame. You also won the Jeff Vasky Service and Entrepreneurship Award. So that was back in April at the New Venture competition. And so what is it about entrepreneurship? What is it about the work happening at that center that really resonates with you? And what does it mean to be honored for your time and service there?
It's so interesting because the Center of Entrepreneurship, the first start was with Robin Anderson back in when I went to school. So I was in one of his first classes. So that resonated with me a lot. More so today, where you've got students that are out there, they're trying to make their mark at the same time that they're getting an education. And this could be in generational businesses with families or by themselves. And the guys that I've been working with are, shooting themselves, going out there on their own, building these businesses. And I've got the opportunity to spend time in the classroom with them, advise the college at a higher level, but individual mentorship with some of these guys and helping them with their businesses. And you'd be surprised at the work that they're doing in the businesses that they're building. It's really exciting what's happening at Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, I think for some of the Redcasters out there, if they'd be familiar with some of the names that have come through that center, Huddle, Open Doors there, Blake Lawrence and Adi Kunalik. I mean, it's an impressive center. I've been able the last couple of years to go to the new venture competition. I always tell people, think Shark Tank. That's that kind of setup. The talent that's coming through here, it's so impressive at the student level, and it's so impressive with what people like you are doing at the mentorship level, helping out. It's such a neat product, and anyone that's ever interested in going to that, reach out to me. In April is when they have it, and it's open to the public. It's just a great. It's everything about the entrepreneurship program there is wonderful.
Yeah, I love the fact that they've got the accelerator program where they've identified entrepreneurs that are getting going pretty quickly, as well as incubator that they have at Nebraska. And the way that the center is actually supporting it in the community is supporting with their dollars and their service and their assistance. It's just absolutely amazing and a great opportunity for kids to understand what we're doing over there and to get involved and get engaged.
Yep. Well, we're big in rankings in Husker land here. We love being ranked. And my last little plug for the entrepreneurship program, they're number 42 in the globe by the Princeton Review, the University of Nebraska Lincoln campuses for entrepreneurship, and the Center of Entrepreneurship is at the center of all that. So, but let's talk a little football here. And
we're going to do that. That's
we're going
right.
to do that. And for those that are new to the forum, I ask the same 4 questions to everyone that comes on it. Why are you a Husker fan? What is your favorite Husker fan memory? Who are your all-time favorite Huskers? And how do you think the team's going to do this year? So, Tom Welter, we're going to start with number 1. Why are you a Husker fan?
Yeah, that's great. That's a really great question. It's I've got some really deep roots here. So I think I went through Nebraska in the golden age of Nebraska. So Bob Devaney came to my senior banquet when I was there. You go. When I was a senior and gave me my award. He brought Dr. Ursula Walsh. So Urs talked with my mom all night about how I was going to get a great education, which that ultimately ended up panning out. Frank Solich came up. He signed me, and that was a wonderful day. My dad was still alive. He was there. And it was just absolutely great. And Tom Osborne, he showed up at my high school, and pretty much the city stopped, right? And people understood that he was in town. And the funny thing was that one of the administrators said, no, Tom Welter's in class. He can't come down to meet with you, not kind of knowing who he was. And I was really fortunate that our football coach was walking the hall and heard that and was able to get that rectified. But Tom told me a couple things. Tom told me, hey, listen, you're going to come to Nebraska. You're going to play on the freshman team. You're going to go to the feedlot year 2 and beef up and get stronger and eat a lot and then come out as a sophomore and play on scout team. And then as you're a junior, you're going to get an opportunity to compete for a job to get on the field. And I kind of love that as far as nothing given. Go out there and get it yourself. And it was great. In addition to those folks on the football side, I mean, you had legends that were there. You had Al Papik that was there when I was there. Dr. Pat Clare, how many folks did he put together? And I played with his son, David, at the same time too. Tommy Heiser stitched my knee up once as a senior. Dr. Sam Fenning, George Sullivan, Martin Massengale as the chancellor. I mean, these guys are just legends at the University of Nebraska.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So when I look back and I think about it, there's a lot of reasons for me to be there and to be a big Husker fan. Lastly, I'd tell you the traditions. That we say there's no place like Nebraska, and it's kind of a cliche. But listen, when I got out there and I went to my first game and they scored a touchdown, and there's 76,000 people, and these red balloons went up. It's just like, oh my gosh, it is unbelievable. And the fans just are so great. And win or lose, they treat the opponents with the utmost class. We get the letters after every game. It's just absolutely amazing.
Oh, that is so. You mentioned Coach Osborne. I want to show you a little clip here. We had him on the show a couple years ago, and he talked about Well, a couple of things you mentioned. He talked about how they built some depth. I'll show you that clip in a bit too. But you mentioned some great, some legends, and he talked about a couple of legends as well here.
We had very good offensive line coaches. We had 2 offensive line coaches. Most schools only have 1. And Milt Tenneper, Dan Young, Cletus Fisher before them did a great job. And we had a tremendous amount of line calls. And so we tried to maximize blocking angles. And a lot of that was once the play was called, you had plays within the plays with the linemen and their line calls.
You know, those coaches that you just mentioned, Cletus Fisher retired in 1985. You were there from 82 to 86. So in 85, you had him all the way up until then. And then, of course, Tenneper was there throughout. And then Dan Young, he got there in 83, but he was doing the freshman teams, I think, and the JV teams. But so talk a little bit about those 3 men. All 3 of them are legends in their own right. And talk about, too, maybe a little bit like what were their roles having 2 coaches? How did they do that? And what was the transition like when it went from Fisher to Young? So a lot to kind of break down there.
Yeah, so it's when I was a junior, it was Cleat and Milt. And Cleat ran the passing offense, which about 10% of our game. And then Milt ran the offensive line running attack. But together, these guys were legend. I mean, and Matt, I can tell you, at Nebraska, every practice, every play, every game, I was filmed, I was graded, and I was coached.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did they grade it at the end of the practice, game, whatever, scrimmage, whatever you call it, but you'd go into film session that next day and then get coached. You'd watch every one of them and understand what happened. So they had it down. They were great. The other thing about it, they had a ton of empathy. And, you think about 19, 22-year-old kids that are leaving their parents. They have their own challenges, some more so than others. They weren't our dad, but my goodness, they took care of us. They were kind to us. And just amazing people. So I learned more from them about life than I did football.
Oh, that's awesome. We on the Redcast here, one of our guys is Boomer, and his dad ran the meatpacking plant in Schuyler for decades, and he got to know Milt really well and got to know the program really well. He would bring the meat wagon down and apparently feed coaches and people and everything. So we got to hang out a couple different times with Milt, a couple times after hours at the watering hole, and just hear stories from him. And I mean, it's just one of those guys. He stayed late with us. He called his wife up and he goes, "Yeah, there's these kids with us, and they want to tell some stories, or they want me to tell them some stories." And so he stayed out with us and most of the evening, and it was just so much fun back then. And I mean, those guys, his license plate was O-line, and I mean that was it. You know, he was he was Nebraska still to this day. You think about how many years it's been since we've had an All-American on the O-line. Or an Outland winner, and we still have the most Outlands of any school. We have the most All-Americans of any offensive line. The guys you played with. I mean, your first year in there in '82. I had Rob Zask on this show, and Rob is part of that pipeline. 1994. That's a great offensive line, but 1982 had 2 Outlands and 3 Lombardis on it between Remington and Steinkuhler alone. You know, I think of some of the other names of that time, the Trankowitz and Benning, and then the time that you're playing there. I mean, you've got, Sledge and McCormick and Blankenship and Lewis. I mean, that is such a rich history that was being played at that time. It's great players.
Yeah, it's if you have to break that down and understand that even deeper, I think it gets as simple as this. It's a double tight, wide left, I formation, 44 ISO. We're going to slam the ball right at you, and we dare you to stop us. And we took a lot of pride in our physicality at Nebraska. I mean, you had Boyd Epley there. You had Tom brought in Swanson doing the training table. We were athletes that were bred to do this and built in order to go to the fourth quarter and to take advantage of another team and to impose our will on others. So we were doing our job, but at the end of the day, it showed up. 300-yard rushing games, number 1, number 2 in the country every year, whether it was Oklahoma or us. And as you said, all the All-Americans. And these guys are my friends. These guys were my big brothers when I got started. And, they took us along the way. They were good guys. And part of it was, handing that down afterwards. I remember when I was a junior and senior, and, look at the guys I had coming behind me: Doug Glazier, Kevin Lightner, Jake Young.
Yeah.
These guys were beasts. So it continued.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I want to show you one other video, and then we'll move on to question 2. But this is another one from Coach Osborne, and it hits on exactly what you said earlier about how they, you were ready to play by the time you got onto the field because of how they repped and did stations and how they did practice and how you got to evaluate. So I want to play this little piece here from Coach Osborne as well.
And so every year we might graduate 3 or 4, sometimes 5 offensive linemen. And people say, well, you're not going to be very good in the offensive line anymore.
Right.
What they didn't realize was that those guys that were second unit, the first unit would get 95 snaps during practice, but the number 2's got 95 snaps. And as a result, we were able to develop talent. And if we had a couple injuries, we could always plug somebody in. It had adequate repetition.
It's so great. I remember watching Osborne talk about, the offense, the option, the I formation there. And coaches from all across the country would want to come in and learn what we did. They'd want to mimic us, and he'd welcome them in. Over the offseason, here's the playbook. This is how we coach it. And nobody would do it. They wouldn't turn around and do it because it's hard. It was a lot of work. It's a lot. People say they want to do 2 stations at 95 players, and all that stuff. It doesn't, but when you actually sit down to start doing it, people just don't want to put in the work. What Coach Osborne and that staff did for all those years, that was so special. And it was just something, they committed themselves to doing it.
Yeah, it was all driven by Tom, obviously, but the staff that he had, think about Nebraska during that time and the tenure that we had on staff and that we kept for years and years and years. Folks had been there for 20 years. And we ran 4 stations throughout the season, and we hit and we went live. And that was really exciting. I remember at our station, we were 1 offense against whatever defense they put in front of us. And it was Milt and it was Frank. And the only person I ever was afraid of was Frank when he'd get mad. And if you remember, Frank's, he's a beast, no doubt. I think he still holds the rushing record for fullbacks at Nebraska. 224 yards as a fullback in 1 game.
Yeah, against Air Force. Yep.
But oh my gosh, when you'd see those veins coming out of his neck, and because we did it wrong, and he'd run it again. You hear run it again, and you're just like, ooh, don't mess with Franks. But we did things right, and I think that repetition, day after day, having the same cadence, understanding what we were going to do, it was very predictable for the players too. And we grew up in that. And I'll tell you what, Matt, one of the other benefits was when we were on the freshman team, we ran the same plays that the varsity ran. So it was from, day 1 through your 5th year being there, getting expertise at what you're supposed to do.
Oh, that's great. Well, let's move on here to question number 2. And what is your favorite Husker fan memory? And I asked this, and it's funny when I have a former player on, sometimes former, favorite memories can be very different than what a true fan has sitting in the stands. You've got to experience a lot of different things as a Husker, but I'm curious, what's your favorite Husker fan memory?
Yeah, so I got some from as a player, and I got some as a fan too, and then some just looking to the past. So I can tell you, 2002, I took my oldest son to South Bend to watch Eric Crouch play Notre Dame, and as you remember, that game went into overtime, and Eric ended it, and it's unbelievable. It was just a trip of a lifetime. We enjoyed it, and I actually wrote Bob Davies a letter at the time he was the head coach, telling him how well we were treated, and he wrote one back, which was really nice. I still have it with a picture of my son at Notre Dame, so that was something I just always remember. Then also as a player, I was so fortunate to play in games with the Heisman Trophy winner, Mike Rozier. Now, we played in different quarters, but the scoring explosion, as you can imagine, was blowing it up. And Tom Welter would get into a game late third quarter as a redshirt freshman and get some playing time. But I remember Mike, and y'all remember it, Mike Rozier going to one way against UCLA, turning around, coming back the other way, Turner acting like he's going to block, but maybe get in the way a little bit. And I think he won the Heisman Trophy that day. I'm not sure, but one of the best runs that we all remember. Louise and I went to Arizona for the Fiesta Bowl against Florida, national
96,
championship game, and we sat in those stands and watched touchdown Tommy Frazier throw off 7 people and go the distance. And I won't forget it because I hugged Louise so hard I broke her glasses. I was so excited about it, seeing Spurrier on the big board with that frown or whatever it was. That was really a special night for us. It was really great. And then one that I've only seen on film, but oh my goodness, he's on the 30, the 20, the 10. He's all the way home. Johnny the Jet just ripped them from their shoes. I mean, Lyle Bremser just bringing it on that Oklahoma game. I mean, who can that? I mean, that soundcast is just—it's epic. It's amazing. It belongs in the College Football Hall of Fame if it's not there, and just wonderful. Something you remember all your life.
Man, woman, and child. No kidding. I'll tell you, 1983. I was telling you this before we went on the air. 1983 is my first. That's my beginning of my Husker fandom. I was born in '77. I don't remember anything up to 83, but then I remember the kickoff classic against Penn State. Had no idea the history of the significance of that game from the year before, prior in state college. But what I remember about 83 was just it's a crazy first year as a fan. To have the Outland winner and the Lombardi winner, to be number one from the beginning of the season all the way up until a 2-point conversion miss, in the last seconds of the Orange Bowl, to have the number 1 and number 2 picks of the NFL draft, to have the number 1 pick of the USFL draft, to have the Heisman pick, all of those things. You talked about the scoring explosion. I remember the Minnesota game. And one of the worst things Minnesota lost to Nebraska, for those that don't know, it was 84-13. But it was 21 points in every single quarter. And one of the worst things that probably could have happened for Minnesota that day was they played at home. So Nebraska couldn't bring 170 guys on the roster. They could only bring 80 guys or 75, whatever the limitation was. And Nebraska just, they'd put in the next guy and they'd score again. I mean, it was like that. But some of those scores that year, a 72, I think, against like Iowa State and 63 against it was basketball on turf, and that had to be a lot of fun to be a part of a team like that.
Yeah, listen, Tom's a humane coach too, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, so in those games, I mean, I'm certain he sent an emissary to the other locker room to say, we're going to run tackle to tackle, just so you know. Mm-hmm. And that's what we did. Yeah. And we didn't throw the ball, but you can't tell a third string offensive lineman not to block so hard. And you can't tell a running back not to run with all their gusto. So unfortunately, you're right. The travel roster was smaller than the home roster. And unfortunately, some other teams, they paid for it that year.
Boy, you block for some great runners. Rozier obviously there wins the Heisman. I always think Doug DeBose, that was a guy, if he didn't get injured, what he did in 84, 80, or 85, that 86 season, he was primed to have that guy. I mean, it was like, who did Oklahoma have that? Marcus Dupree. It was that kind of running back. And then Dupree had the injury. When DuBose got injured, it was just like, just kicking the sails, because like that guy, he was for Redcasters that don't remember that name. Doug DeBose would have been as good as any of them. He was as good as any of them when he was at his best.
Doug DeBose may have been the best running back Nebraska's ever had. Mm-hmm. Not only was he swift as a deer. He'd drop his shoulder and he'd punish people too. He could read. He could read a hole as well as anybody. He was amazing. I think he was 1,000-yarder as a sophomore and a junior, and he was just getting primed to come into his senior year. And obviously he blew his knee on the spring practices, but just an amazing guy. We actually we came on our recruiting trip together. It was a Sunday. Wow. We were the only ones in Lincoln, and we had dinner together. And we talked about both of us coming. I said, "Are you going to come?" He goes, "Are you going to come and block?" And I said, "Yep." I said, "Are you going to come run?" He goes, "Yep." We were like, "Yep, let's do this." We both committed that night.
Oh, that's so. Where was Doug DuBose from?
I'll get it wrong, but Yukonsville, Connecticut.
Okay.
That's the name. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but he's from Connecticut.
So he's from the Northeast. You're from Yankton, South Dakota. Yep. And I think that's one of the things I love too about Husker football. When we're at our best, when I think of our greatest teams, it's you get those in-state kids and those surrounding state kids, and then we're going to pull in guys from the Northeast, from California, from Texas, and kind of pick it here and there. But you're always going to have your central core of that radius around the state as well too. And that what a great story there. That here's a kid from the Northeast and someone from Yankton, and they're getting together, having dinner, and saying let's commit.
Yeah, no, it's great, and it's interesting that you talk about Nebraska a little bit in recruiting. I believe the stat is still 70% of our All-Americans have come from Nebraska. Mm-hmm. 2 of our Heisman Trophy winners from Nebraska, and you think about that, and you think about recruiting. You got to own the 5-state surrounding area. You got to own Nebraska, and we always were good in Texas, and we had pipelines coming out of Louisiana and some other states, but at the end of the day, we've got some really great football players in the state of Nebraska.
Absolutely. Well, I guess we're kind of talking about this. I'll hit question 3. Who are some of your all-time favorite Huskers? And maybe you've named them already too.
Yeah, couple maybe folks haven't heard of. Bob Brown from the Sixers. Yeah. Bob was a College Football Hall of Fame and a Pro Football Hall of Famer. We were connected a few years back by a mutual friend, and we got to spend some time together, and just a quality human being. Bob Newton, All-American, 10-year pro, Seahawks. He came back to Nebraska at a time when I was at a juncture in my career where I needed a Bob Newton, and he was there, and he was very helpful to me. 2 guys I think about at linebacker. This is really interesting. And I know them both, and they're friends, so they won't take offense to it. Mike Knox and Steve Damkroger. And I'm going to say this. They were not the premier best athletes in the world, okay? Mm-hmm. They'll admit that. These guys could hit like bricks, and when they plugged holes, all right? Mm-hmm. Were strong side linebackers that were killers. How can you go through a list like this and not say Taylor Martinez? Yeah. Maybe the fastest guy that played that position. Roy Hulu Jr. Played in the same conference with my kid in high school. Rex Burke and Amir Abdullah. Remember Amir's run that saved the game? Who was it
against McNeese State?
Oh my gosh. We would have been the Appalachian State-Michigan game.
Well,
and, right?
Against the famous Hail Mary against Northwestern doesn't happen if Amir doesn't get a first down on a 4th down catch where he caught it and he had to get like 10 yards and beat like 3 guys to get it. He was a gamer when the game was on the line. He made the play.
Amazing player. Just no list would be right without Ndamukong Suh.
Oh yeah.
And we talked about the linemen. I'll say one other one just because. Oh my gosh, he excites me still. That kick, Alec Henry.
Well, yeah.
That kick I'm talking about.
Oh, against Colorado, yeah, the 57-yarder.
Oh, and the call on that. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, if you haven't heard it, you got to play it. The call starts off. Go to Nebraska bookstore. and then he walks it through it. This will be a 57-yarder. He knocks it through, and the place goes nuts. This is great. You don't forget that stuff.
Oh, I mean, those are some great names there. For those that are just joining, this is Tom Welter with us. He's entering the 2025 class inductee into the Nebraska Football Hall of Fame. You mentioned Bob Brown. Speaking of Hall of Fame, he's in the College Football Hall of Fame and the NFL Hall of Fame. There's just some great names there. Mike Knox, number 44, if I remember right. And that dude, I mean, he was just, I love it. Just some of the hits he had back there in those mid 80s. I mean, that was good old Big 8 football. And, one of the things too, I was looking at your senior year, 1986, and looking at the schedule, and Nebraska went 10-2 with arguably its best player, Doug DeBose, got injured prior to the season. And it's crazy. Like, we were a victim of our own standards at that point. 10-2, that was at that time. Today we would take 10-2 every single year, but back then, I mean, my gosh, we got to win national titles, right? It's like that season, and then you look at who you guys played. Your non-conference schedule was like South Carolina, Illinois, Oregon, and Florida State. I mean, that's what the schedules looked like then. And you guys to go 10-2 through that, and it was such a different time. I was so impressed by what you guys accomplished.
Yeah, it was a fun team to be on. Both of them were the year before and that one, but I can remember a couple of those games that you just mentioned. The opener, Deion Sanders, was in that game. He caught Steve Taylor by a foot. Steve was getting ready to score. He ran like 40 yards, but Deion was a freshman. South Carolina, Brian Siebler, if he didn't intercept that pass at the end, we probably lose. But he stopped the game right there. So really great memories. And then going back to the Sugar Bowl for the second time in 3 years and beating LSU again, that was great.
Yeah, I mean, playing LSU in Louisiana in the bowl game, that's just like playing Miami down there in the Orange Bowl.
Right.
Florida State, that was the first ever night game at Memorial Stadium. Always remember that. Big national TV.
Matt, you might not remember it, but the game we played the year before against them, it probably is the hottest game on history at Nebraska. It was like 120 on the field. And nobody scored in the second half. I think we lost 17-10, but it was brutal.
I went to a coach's clinic. I was going to all the coaches' clinics between like Solich and the Frost era, but they would bring in different guys. And Bobby Bowden came in one time and spoke. And I've heard him say this other times, but he said it there as well. He goes, Florida State played Nebraska 4 times in the 80s, every single time in Lincoln. Never asked for a return visit. They were trying to build a program. And he basically just flat out said, he's like, that is what he gave that series with Nebraska credit for what built Florida State into what they became. And they went 2-2 against us. And the fact that they won 2 of them in Lincoln, I mean, that's an amazing feat. But yeah, they went from being, a no-name independent at the beginning of the decade, and by the end of it, they were, building into that power that they became. He gave all that credit to playing at Nebraska.
That's great.
Well, I think, we got through the first 3 questions. I told you, Tom, that usually about half the show is those first 3 ones, and the number 4, this is the other half, and it goes in so many different directions. But how do you think the Huskers will do next year? That's the question. Well, we're already into the season. We get the benefit of the doubt of having seen 1 game played already. Yeah. Nebraska wins a week ago right now at Arrowhead. They win 20-17 against Cincinnati, a Power 4 school. So we've got a victory to start off. How did you feel about that game, and how are you feeling right now going into year 3 of the rule era?
Yeah, I watched the game obviously, and a couple things. One, I'm glad we made a play to win. Right, that's something different for us for the last couple of years. That we didn't lose a game that was a 1-score game. So really excited for the guys that they were able to do that. Matt talks about moving from game 1 to game 2, and I think that's going to be critically important for this team. It's going to require that we get better every week. We get better every week, and that's just the nature of the Big Ten. And so what's our biggest loss from last year? Well, it's not a player, it's Tony White. I mean, let's make no mistake. I mean, we saw what he did against Alabama, and
Mhm.
it's just been absolutely fantastic career for that gentleman right there. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm optimistic. I think they'll have a terrific week this week against Akron, and I think the season it's going to have to play out.
Yeah. I think your point about development is so important. This is a team. It's got to be a program under Coach Rule that is a developmental program, gets better from week to week. We want to see that improvement. I mentioned Bobby Bowden earlier, and there's a famous statement he had about building a program. And he goes, at first you lose big, and then you lose small, and then you win small, and then you win big. If
That's right.
if you can get to that point. This was not a blowout. We didn't cover the spread, but we found a way to win a close game, and that's been kind of the big bugaboo for Nebraska football here the last well before Rule got here, the last 10 seasons. It's been a lot of close losses, special teams, gaffes, all that. And one of the best coaches I've seen in the 15 years I was going to coaches clinics at Nebraska, when Mike Eckler was here for 3 years under Pelini, and he was the linebackers coach, he was just dynamic. You knew he was going to be a dynamite coach. And to have him come back after the success he's had now at other schools as a special teams coach, to come back here and, we didn't talk about, I don't know who our snapper is right now, our deep snapper, because we didn't hear about it because there weren't, snaps all over the place. The punter caught the ball and then punted. The kicker made a 52-yard field goal and we were coughing, cornering, the punts. And so we did the little things there. We won the turnover battle and we won a close game. And hopefully, if we are getting developed as the season goes along, maybe that by game 6 and 7, if we're playing a comparable team to Cincinnati, maybe it's not as close anymore. Maybe we're winning it by double digits, a couple touchdowns, and go from there.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think the kicking game obviously much different than it was last year. I think some of the strengths of this team are guard to guard. I think that's we got some, Rocco coming in, and then great center play, and I think we got some good backups in that category too. Tight end is a extremely strong position for the team, and it's going to need to be with Bonner out. Um, I think if you take a look at what's going to happen with the offense moving forward, we're going to definitely need another running back that's going to have to carry part of the load because our number one can't do it, just by himself. And I think the coach has talked about that. Emmett's a extremely strong back, and with Dante moving on to Kentucky, and he had a great game last week. He ran for $126, I think. It's going to be a slug. Secondary just looks terrific, right? They just look great. So I think we're going to be gambling a little bit on defense coming after some folks. I don't think we can just sit in there and wait for them to come. This is the Big Ten, and the Big Ten has big men in the front five.
Well, it's not every day I get to have an All-American tackle on the show with me. I had Rob Zask on before, and it's always interesting to get offensive linemen's perspectives on offensive line. And so you mentioned just guard to guard. How do you watch a game? What do you look at? Like when you see that and you go, okay, guard to guard, we look good. But then, at certain positions, you're like, okay, what are we struggling at? What are we doing well at the tackle spot? What are some things you see as you're watching a game?
Yeah, I think, I'll just talk personnel. I mean, I think Teddy played well, and Teddy's just he hasn't finished a year that he started. He's had real injury issues, but he looked good. I was impressed, and I think the coaching staff recognized that too, and took him off either or and put him on as the starter this week on the depth chart. We've got 3 left tackles last week, and we've got 3 left tackles this week. And that's not where we need to be. So, hopefully all 3 of them can get better, and grade out better and be more efficient. I don't think it's a matter of skill. It rarely is when you're at that level. It's just being able to be in the right place at the right time and make your block at the right time. So I think, hopefully they'll play better as a unit. I think first week, the second week is going to tell us a lot against Akron, who, it's probably undermanned against us. So I hope they play exceptionally well. And, I said it before, I'm really bullish about this 26 offensive line team. Sam Sledge, I played with his daddy, and he was he was a killer. I mean, Bob was just, in fact, I was texting him tonight. He's a great friend and a great offensive guard. Grant Bricks, I mean, we got him, from Iowa, where Iowa should have gotten him. He's going to show up, and I think Jason over on the left guard, I think he's going to step up too. So I think that 26 team is going to look really good. But for today, we're going to have people step into the hole today and make sure that we're getting it done.
Well, you mentioned a guy like Bricks, and he's interesting because he was, the blue chip top, recruit to get. And I think I say this in a very positive way. I'm glad he's not necessarily having to play right now. He's in his second season, and then by next year, he'll be in his third season. And especially on the O-line, like a year ago, Gatula had to play right away due to injury. And I mean, we talked about your career. Well, first off, you had injury early on too. And then, but to be able to redshirt and to be able then to get snaps in there in 83 and work your way into 84. And then by the time you get to 86, you're an All-American. And that's a long-term play with somebody. And I think sometimes today in the NIL transfer portal world, we just think that we're going to get somebody to come in here, start for us. He's going to be an All-American, then, and there's still got to be a development piece, especially on the O-line. You can have 5 unbelievable individuals, but if they don't play together, that was the one thing that the 94 pipeline guy said, and I'm sure the teams you were on would have said the same thing. When you played together for so long, you can finish each other's sentences. You know every line call. You've done it. And I worry sometimes in this world today that we can bring 5 studs in from 5 different schools, and they could be each All-American talent, but how do they play together?
Right. We got a guy from Alabama, a guy from Notre Dame. We got a couple guys that have been here legacy. So, how are they talking to each other? How are they working with each other? And the good thing is that this week, Matt, these second teamers are going to play. And they're going to show the coaches in live fire what it looks like. So, I think you might see some things change after week 2, maybe even after, we play Houston the week after that. So, keep your fingers crossed. And I think the surprise that I'll give you today is I think you'll see the offense change a little bit to be more tight end focused with the way the offense is running today. That's my prediction.
Well, there's certainly some talented guys there between, Harburg being back there. Well, first off, Lindenmeyer, I think he is the perfect walk-on to scholarship to stud story that we can all get behind at Nebraska. Harburg brings so much skills to the position. It'll be interesting to see what they do with him. Penn State had Warren a year ago, won the Mackey Award, and he was a former quarterback, switched to tight ends. There can be talent similarities. I don't want to put that much on him, but Carter Nelson from Ainsworth, football. I mean, this is an opportunity. And Bonner's injury is, and we hate injuries, and I feel just gutted for the kid. I feel terrible for him. But it's also football, and you got to move on, and someone else has to step up and take that. Who wants to take that role now? And I can see a guy like Carter Nelson, very athletic, bigger guy that can take some of the same types of plays that we would have seen maybe from Bonner. It'll be interesting to see. I love you're speaking my language if tight ends going to be an answer to some of the offensive.
I think it has to be. I think you're going to need to. Once we get into Big Ten play, you're going to be chip blocking. You're going to have 2 of them on the field at one time. And Dana's brilliant. He'll take the tools that he has and use them appropriately. So it'll be exciting to see how we move the ball going forward.
Yeah. This is defensively. I think, there's a lot of focus that was on the 200 yards rushing that was given up. I would say most of that went to a quarterback, and they did some things where I think we had some leaky stunts that we were doing on the D-line, some young guys there, and the QB was able to get out and, especially in that second half, get some runs on us. their running back. One of them was a transfer from Wisconsin. I mean, we kept those guys in check pretty well. I mean, there's some good signs there. But the pass defense that you mentioned earlier, the secondary, that's right in Coach Butler's wheelhouse. I think when he was with Buffalo in the NFL, they led the defense. They led the league for like 3 or 4 years in pass defense with him as a coach, and it seems like that's an area of strength that he brings.
Yeah, I think whenever you can play man and you can use an additional person to rush, that will help a defense that's maybe a little undermanned. So I think that's going to be a big benefit for this team, that they actually can play man. And listen, there's these kids are going to get better during the year. They are. We've seen it year in, year out, and Matt's a developmental guy, so I've got faith in those guys.
Yeah, that D line, there are some young guys there. They were getting their first real snaps. And I mean, just to try to put this in perspective, folks, if you've never played on that level of field, most people haven't. You're playing in Arrowhead Stadium. You are playing on national TV, and this is your first time out there in front of 70-some thousand, mostly Husker fans there.
And Patrick Mahomes was walking by you.
Oh my gosh, we could turn around and literally Taylor Swift and Kelsey and them. I could throw a football to them. They were that close to us. Right. So that was an insane environment. And this gets back to just, in fact, I was talking with a colleague today, and he came up to me and he asked me, he goes, what letter grade would you give the team from that game? And I go, a W. That's my only, that's the letter I'll give you. It's a W. It was a win. We found a way in a unique environment. It's not hard or easier. It's a unique environment. We're at Arrowhead, and with all the craziness, and it's the season opening game. And I'll tell you what, I'd much rather be talking about the deficiencies of this team right now after that win, as opposed to, go talk to the Alabama fan right now that's jumping off a cliff.
There's no doubt about it. So, I mean, and that's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about where they're at today, where they're going to go. We believe they're all going to take a step. They all got coached. They saw their film, and they saw where mistakes were made, saw the great effort that they made and the plays that they made. And a lot of good out there. So I'm excited to watch, week 1 to week 2, playing a MAC school and seeing the progression that they have.
I like tying this back a little bit to your time too. Think of like 83 and a season that was so explosive, but it was a bunch of guys that were also going to leave. The seniors, they were done. So when you hit 84 and that's a whole new team now. You're replacing QBs and running backs and the number 1 pick in the draft at wide receiver, and you're replacing Steinkuhler. And how does that first game opener work? And then how do you guys develop over the course of a season back then? I mean, again, it's a whole new team out there.
It's just so interesting that the guys that when in the 80s when I was there, I mean, the second team line could play at any given time, and you really wouldn't miss a beat. You saw linebackers go down. You saw running backs. I remember Steve Taylor went out, and Cleet Blakeman. Everyone knows Cleet. Cleet's an NFL official. Cleet came in against Oklahoma State and did his thing. So it wasn't a Matt Turpin story for those that know that, but it was a Matt Turpin story, right? I mean, where second string quarterback comes in and runs the offense, because guess what? He ran 90 plays a day, every day under Tom's tutelage. So I think that repetition, that there's something to it, and having that consistency, and believe it or not, I mean, it's interesting. Tom was a genius when it came to putting in offensive plays, or wrinkles, I would call them, and wouldn't be a lot, but the ones that he put in, they worked. And he didn't need to do a bunch of it, because he was going to pound the ball at you and dare you to stop him, or run that option that was, who could guard that? But he had good wrinkles too.
Oh, I guess the Bummerooski, the Fumblerooski, just some amazing the history of what Coach Osborne brought to the game of football. I mean, it just, and the physical nature of it. It was all based around being physical at the core of it. And I always remember players from the 80s and 90s talking about the toughest thing they do all week was on Wednesday in practice against the defense, right? Or against the other side. And if practice can be harder than the game, then that's a pretty good feeling to have going into the game.
That's great. It's so great. And I just think that built, iron on iron, sharpening us. And, we're friends outside, but, it was always offense versus defense. And listen, this wasn't the 90s. This was the 80s. The offense won these battles, okay? This was not the 90s, all right?
I love, I actually want to ask you, this is kind of off the field type of a question, but there's so many successful people that have been former Husker players that have gone on and have successful careers. You were one as well. What was it? What did you take away from being a Husker football player? What was Coach Osborne like from a leadership perspective, and the men that you were around, the coaches, the trainers, the people that you talked about too? Like, what was the secret sauce, so to speak, that you see so many people that have come out of that program go on to be, great leaders, and outside off the field?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I think it starts with the way Tom lived his life, right? And the way he coached, the way he held himself. And he never got too hot. He never got too cold. He was just straight down the middle, that calming effect. But I think the daily discipline, I think the expectation was so high. Think about this, Matt, and I'll talk from an offensive lineman perspective. They asked us to move people backwards 3 yards that knew that's what we were going to do, and they didn't want that to happen. So to be able to instill that in 5 young men, to say you've got to push them, you got to move the line of scrimmage, there's got to be some discipline, and you've got to have some faith, and you've got to have a little bit of Boyd Epley in you to make sure that you got some set. And that's the way it worked. That's just the way it worked. We got stronger, we got smarter, we had more academic All-Americans than anyone in the country. We went to study hall. We had, like I said, Swanson at our training table. We had sports psychologists for the first time ever, anyone in the country. So Tom was cutting edge, and people thought he was just the guy that ran the football. Anything but it.
Anything but. That's right. We asked him that question about the offense. Mac on our on the Redcast, he was joking with Coach Osborne. He goes, how'd you guys do it with running the same 4 plays? And we laughed for a second. Then Coach is like, but he goes, we ran 15 sets. We ran 5 wide receivers down to double tights, full house backfield, and everything in between. And he could get people before they even snapped the ball to line up in the wrong spot. And at the end of the day, you're also going to have to stop what we do anyways. And if we're pushing somebody that doesn't want to get pushed 3 yards back, if you're making all the right calls, if coach would talk about that with trusting in the players, trusting in the quarterback to make an audible, and he'll get us into the right call that we would have called from the sideline, trusting the line to make that line call. There's a beauty of that. When you see that working and coming to fruition, that's a talented team that's disciplined, that's worked together, and they're showing it every week.
I tell you what, as a defensive coordinator, I would never want to face Tom Osborne, because you had to prepare for everything. He could do anything on that field at any given time, and you didn't know. And then you had to stop what you knew was a punishing ground attack. And tough stuff, and God love him.
There was a crazy stat I remember growing up when I'd watch a game, and it just kept growing every game. But it was like when Nebraska hit 300 yards rushing, we were 75-1 over the last 76 games, 76-1 over the last 77. It just kept growing. It was the most for sure bet you could make. If Nebraska hit 300 yards, we're going to win the football game rushing. If we can hit 300 rushing, and we did more times than not back in that time, that level of consistency. And I mean, I could go off and we could do an entire separate show on this, but Coach Osborne was the passing guru of college football in the 1970s. He made that switch a few years before you got there, and bring in Turner Gill. We're losing to Oklahoma because of the option. Let's run some of that same stuff that they're running. And for him to be able to make that switch and shift and be as good running the ball as he was coaching passing, that's that he's on the Mount Rushmore of coaches in college football history, and rightfully so.
He's the best that ever was.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just absolutely no doubt of it. And the people that he brought on and he surrounded himself with were as good as their position coaching as possible. Charlie McBride, oh my gosh, George Darlington, Ron Brown, Frank, friend of mine, Gene Huey. I mean, just great guys that did just great work for him. So
and stuck with him. They all could have gone somewhere else if they wanted to, but they stuck around with him for all those years because they wanted to be there. And I think it's we let go of Frank and he went somewhere else, and now his name's on a field there, and he's in the College Football Hall of Fame. And finally, I'm glad he got the right. He got the right credit that he deserves here at Nebraska too. I'm glad he's been able to come back and be a part of it. It's just. That was the unbelievable staff. Charlie McBride. We switched from a 5-2 to a 4-3. We don't have to bring in a new D coordinator to do it. He's a great coach. He'll take care of it, and we'll run a 4-3 now, and we'd win titles with that.
Yeah, no, it's being part of the. I said it earlier. There's no place like Nebraska, and there truly isn't. When I started coming back for the Center of Entrepreneurship and started coming back into the athletic program, Doak Ostergaard, brought me back, and I got to spend time with Trev. I got to spend some time with Coach Rowe, and I got to spend some time, now with Troy. Troy's the best thing that Nebraska could have right now in an athletic director. And if you look what's happening in Nebraska athletics, not just volleyball, but wrestling, women's sports, basketball, facilities. He's doing great work. And if you ask Troy, Troy I've heard Troy speak at College Business. You did too, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I've talked to him a couple times, spent some time on the field with him. He would tell you that one of the greatest decisions at Nebraska that was made in the last 2 decades was Tom Osborne taking us to the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
He cites that, and there's a lot of reasons why. So,
mm-hmm.
It's exciting, and listen, I'm excited for Matt Rule. I'm excited for Dana. I'm excited for Eckler and the rest of the coaching staff. They've got a lot of clay to work with. They're doing a great job. They're building these kids. Week 1 to week 2, let's get another W. Week 3, let's get another W. And then let's worry about Michigan on week 4.
On week 4. Oh, I love it. Well, tradition here on the Fan Forum and on the Redcast here, we have our parting shot segment. When we have a guest on, I always give the floor to him at the very end, him or her. And but before we do, I want to thank you again, Tom, for joining us obviously tonight. I love what you've done to give back to the university, both on the field and off the field. I'm as proud of what you've done with the Center for Entrepreneurship as I am you being inducted into the Football Hall of Fame. They're great accomplishments, and you've done so much in your time. And I just want to thank you for that. This is Nebraska, the university. It's such an important place to people, and it's special. And I love it when people share the same passion and want to give back. And it's been so fun and so satisfying to get to know you. I do want to show a couple of pictures here because I didn't do it earlier, and darn it, I created the graphic. So you mentioned your wife, Louise. Here is you met her in the '84 Orange Bowl?
I did, down in Miami. I made bed check, but I missed curfew. So so that's 40 years ago, and I met her at the International Club. We danced, and one thing led to another, and here we are.
Oh, I love it. Here you are. Yep, you're part of the 2025 Hall of Fame class here, number 69. And here you are with the St. Louis and the Phoenix Cardinals, number 66 there. Heck of a career.
Oh, thank you so much. I'd like to, as you said, parting shot. I'd like to say this. I'm so grateful to the University of Nebraska and to the athletic department, and even more so to the fans of Nebraska all across the country, especially the residents of the state of Nebraska, who epitomize the hardworking effort, the agricultural community, the people that have their fingers in the soil, that are bringing it every day and instill that work ethic in their football team. I couldn't be more proud to be a part of them.
Wow. We're proud to be able to call you one of us as well, Tom. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you off the show. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show here. And you know what? I think we're going to call that a fan forum. And so just remember, Redcasters, you too could be the next one to join us on the forum.
A Herd at Sports Network production.